MTC 2023 EBS Chapter 16 Number 0102. Social interaction varies across what we might think of as social space. Drawing on his theatrical metaphor, Goffman analyzed this space into distinct areas. Goffman. Stage actors prepare for their performances in dressing rooms and warm-up areas that are backstage, out of the view of audiences. In moving onto the stage itself, and especially front stage, actors abruptly enter the roles they have prepared for and practiced backstage. The transition is marked by changes in demeanor, body position, voice, and so on. By these means, actors become different persons for the audience, as opposed to who they are for themselves and for their fellow actors backstage. But the same is true of life in general, Goffman argued. Goffman. All of us prepare for public performances backstage, using the privacy of bedrooms and bathrooms to groom ourselves and otherwise strive for the effect we want to achieve when in public. Transitions between the two arenas are often marked by distinctive gestures. Before leaving the backstage, we check one last time in the mirror for our appearance, correct our posture, and perhaps take a deep breath, while upon return we may exhale explosively, kick off our shoes, and flop down on a couch. When surrounded backstage by intimates, our speech and dress are casual and we may feel free to perform grooming exercises that are taboo in public, while in the furthest recesses of our backstage, we carry out acts of intimacy or of fundamentally private grooming. Re-entry front stage causes all these informalities and tabooed behaviors to be left behind. Our behavior now has to conform to explicit standards of correctness, formalities that can be hard to learn and exacting to perform. 2023 EBS Chapter 16 Number 0304. In one of the most famous passages in all philosophy, Plato describes prisoners in a cave, chained to face a wall upon which shadows move to and fro, cast by objects being moved between them and a fire which burns behind them. Having known nothing else, the prisoners mistake the shadows for reality. One prisoner is freed, and forced to turn to see the objects and the fire, and then painfully he moves up into the light beyond the cave. Having seen the light of the sun, he realizes that the shadows are no more than unreal, ever-changing copies, and not reality itself. He then descends again into the cave to explain this to the other prisoners, but they reject his claims as foolish and continue to concentrate on predicting the patterns and movements of their shadows, which is the criterion by which they judge one another to be successful. This analogy is generally used to highlight Plato's theory of knowledge, the difference between individual things, the shadows, and the corresponding eternal realities. But it is equally an account of the absurdity of political life. Those who concentrate on the passing shadows, trends, focus groups, opinion polls, and the media in a modern context are unable to appreciate the fundamental realities and principles that alone will bestow wisdom. Hence, those who are to rule the state, the guardians, need to be trained and equipped to do so in such a way that they do not fall into the temptations of impartiality and self-interest, but constantly use as their reference the sun beyond the cave, his form of the good. 2023 EBS Chapter 16 Number 0506. By and large, New Year's resolutions don't work. At the same time, people regularly fail to apply their willpower and resort to old habits. Given the relative roles and influence of the unconscious emotional brain and the conscious logical brain, this is not at all surprising. The thinking brain is like a lion tamer and the emotional brain is the lion. Through careful, patient, and repeated efforts, the tamer can learn to tame the lion and manage the beast in an effective way. However, ultimately, the lion is always the more powerful animal, representing the thousands of automatic operations we carry out every second outside of conscious awareness. We must always remember that the lion has been around much longer than the tamer and is always capable of taking command of a situation. The tamer must always treat the lion with respect, working in harmony with it in order for things to operate smoothly and safely. The consequences of the tamer and the lion not being in harmony could be disastrous. We often think of rapport between ourselves and other people, but what about the rapport between your thinking brain and your emotional brain? If the two brains are fighting against each other, the emotional brain will win every time. This would explain why your attempts to give up smoking, lose weight through dieting, or take more exercise often fail. Your logical brain knows that not smoking, eating healthy food and exercise are good for you. However, your emotional brain governs a set of attitudes, emotions, and habits that are not in harmony with this logic. The good news is that it is possible for the tamer to train and manipulate the lion in certain ways, distracting it from harmful actions and focusing its attention on more positive ones. But never forget, the lion is always much more aware of what is going on within us and around us than the tamer. Your lion will communicate with you via feelings, intuitions, dreams, and physical symptoms, and the more you listen to it and understand it, the more likely you are to create a successful tamer and lion relationship. 2023 EBS Chapter 16 Number 0708. The morality of ordinary life requires us to regard others as autonomous beings and to respect their choices. Immanuel Kant instructed us to cast a veil of philanthropy over the faults of others, by silencing our judgments. Immanuel Kant. This command amounts to requiring us to regard the acts of others as if they were chosen with thoughtful consideration and for good reasons. For the most part, the Kantian attitude of respect commands us to leave others alone and allow them to advance their own conception of the good. Even doctors observe this rule when they are outside of their clinical setting. When they see others smoking cigarettes, they walk by with respectful disregard even though they worry about cancer. They hold their tongues when they observe others sporting multiple tattoos or numerous items of body-piercing jewelry, even though they are concerned about hepatitis. They even remain silent as overweight others indulge in rich desserts although they are aware of the dangers of obesity. Nevertheless, in a visit to the doctor's office, it is hard to imagine that a good doctor would fail to caution a patient about the risks of cancer, hepatitis, or obesity. Physicians are not allowed to presume that their patients are acting autonomously. Instead, they are responsible for attentive assessment of patients' decisional capacity, and they are sometimes required to take steps to oppose patients' preferences, e.g., overriding the wishes of the patient who refuses surgery out of fear that her body will be invaded by aliens through the incision. MTC. Good job.